right, welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show, everybody. Today we're recording this on Saturday, February 8th, after a poor showing by Chelsea in the FA Cup, losing to Brighton 2-1. And yesterday, Friday Night Lights, Bayern Munich beat Werder Bremen 3-0 in the Bundesliga, which might end up being an important win for them. But we'll talk about that all. And before we begin, yes, this is another video episode, so check it out on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to be part of that 100 subscriber special. Comment down below on the videos, and if you comment and you're a subscriber, we'll either give you that 5 minutes of air, or I'll ship over some Bayern Munich cards. I guess we'll let the winner choose. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, gonna be awesome once we hit that 100 subscriber mark. Just crossed 600 over on TikTok as well, so give us a follow over there. We have been posting a lot of these video snips from our video podcasts, so definitely follow us on everything because there's a lot of stuff to talk about and consume as always in the football world.
Yep. Twitter too at alwaysbayche. Yeah, we've been putting in a lot of work. You've been doing great work on those snips, so that's important these days. A lot of people consume stuff in short form media, but if you want longer form, you know, here we are, providing you with a full breakdown of the weekend's matches. And yeah, why don't we just jump right in and start with Bayern Munich? Does that sound good?
Yeah, Bayern Munich with a Friday afternoon match over here in the States, Friday evening in the beautiful country of Germany, where my ancestors came from. So, yeah, your typical Friday match, which I don't always love as a fan, seeing that I do have a job during the day, but it's kind of exciting at the same time because it's not as typical as normal.
Yeah, I share those sentiments. I think it's harder to keep up with the weekday matches for sure. And something about that Saturday morning, getting a cup of coffee, or if you're down at the beer hall, a liter, pick your poison, I suppose, and filling up on one of those two things, and just starting the day off right. I really like. It's given me motivation to wake up earlier on these weekends and whatnot. So, but nonetheless, this one was a Friday match, and if you are maybe a Bundesliga regular, or yeah, I don't know, someone who's into that type of thing, it might not have been the worst one to miss. The first half was super, super uneventful, and luckily Bayern turned things on in the second half, and got the job done. But yeah, we'll talk about it all, and I'll just start off by running down the lineup from Company. Relatively standard lineup, not really many unexpected changes. But you had Manuel Neuer in between the sticks, Sasha Bouet at right back. That was maybe someone who you might not have expected, as Company seems to like Laimer back there. But you saw Upa and Kim as the center backs, like always. You saw Rafa Guerrero at the left back. And then Joshua Kimmich, Alexander Pavlovich in the midfield, Michael Olise at the right wing, Jamal Musiala at the 10, Kingsley Coman at the left wing, Harry Kane at the 9. Any thoughts on from you on that lineup? Like I said, for me it was kind of what I expected, but a few things maybe to mention.
Definitely a strong lineup, and I think it's almost becoming clear that company just likes Coman quite a bit at that left wing.
Yeah, I agree, and that's I think one spot where I would differ from Company, is I wouldn't be starting Kingsley Coman at the left wing. Uh, the winger situation, man, oh man, and it really wasn't much better in this match. But the wingers are not doing good for Bayern, and it's becoming a problem. Up to the point now where I mentioned this last time, kind of at the back end, but I want to say it straight up out front this time. I think and maybe not in this match against Werder Bremen in the Bundesliga, but some of these big matches coming up, Leverkusen, even Celtic, but potentially later on in the Champions League against Leverkusen or Atletico Madrid if they get past Celtic. I think what you got to start to do is either run a 4-3-3 with the midfield of Pavlovic, Polina, and Kimmich, again, giving you three different profiles. Polina maybe being more of that defender, strengthening the weak defense that we've seen. Um, and then just run with Musiala out kind of left, Kane in the center, and Olise on the right side. and kind of space out the attack a little bit more. Or if you are married to a 4-2-3-1, try Musiala at the left wing. That's just, you know, my opinion. Sure, contract talks are ongoing and Musiala wants to play the 10, so Bayern's really kind of, I don't know, tiptoeing around some issues like that, and they're not going to move him out to left wing, but that's what I would do. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean Musiala I always think is great in those tight spaces, but I do kind of agree with your logic on the players that Bayern has. I mean, Musiala ultimately can play anywhere, whereas some of these other left wingers that aren't doing a good job at times almost make your team worse. So certainly something for company to consider.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'll start when I start to break down this match is, beginning of the match, we saw, well, throughout the match, we saw three or four, I think four, but beginning of the match, we saw, two or three um, balls that Kingsley Coman just completely skied. And I don't want to just totally, like, you know, rip on this guy because I like Coman as a leader. I like him as a guy, and I like a lot of the attributes he has as a player. He can burn a defender. He does it left and right. He'll burn defenders. He tracks back in such a great way, and he plays defense where you have Guerrero at the left back position right now. Guerrero's a total defensive liability. Again, I like some of the things Guerrero brings going forward, but he's a defensive liability, and Coman kind of shores up things back there when Guerrero's nowhere to be found or just positionally struggling. But man, as an attacker, Coman just is not good enough for this Bayern team right now. It's sad because he's been an important part of the club's history, but some of the balls that he skied in this match were laughable. He ended up having one that was really close that I think was the one that you saw and you texted me about, and that was actually a decent shot. But prior to that one, eighth minute, maybe sixth minute, maybe 10th minute ish, he skied multiple balls so far over the net. When you have a Harry Kane streaking into the box, it's just unacceptable.
Yeah, Coman definitely needs to figure it out, especially if he's going to be getting more time as it seems like company's trying to give him. So, am I super worried? Maybe not yet in terms of the league for Bayern because they're talented enough and I still think they'll be fine there. But if you want to do well in the Champions League, you're certainly going to need to see better performances in total from a lot of these guys, and Coman's at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about because, we've seen it all year from Company. He dominates these most of these Bundesliga matches. I mean, Bayern has what is it, 54 points now in 21 or 22 games or something like that. Um, but every time there's a big test, the Pokal match against Leverkusen, Villa, Barca in the Champions League, even Feyenoord in the Champions League, and some of these, Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, Frankfurt in the Bundesliga in the first half, Dortmund in the Bundesliga in the first half, all these matches that are big tests, Company isn't necessarily doing enough, and the players, maybe even more so than the coach, are not doing enough. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Bayern Munich has huge aspirations this year in the Champions League. The final is in Munich, so they want to be there. And right now, with the way that this attack is playing, really bar Kane, um, it's probably not enough to win them the Champions League. Now, I like what I see out of Musiala and Olise most of the time as well, so they're kind of excluded in this conversation, but even both of them haven't been amazing lately, so yeah, I don't know. And it's just that's kind of how the match started. It was frustrating because we saw a lot of missed chances, and I guess as far as Bremen goes, they weren't doing anything either. So they had a couple chances that they kind of squandered in the first half, but yeah, really not much to mention in that first half except for poor wing play by Bayern.
So how are Bremen 11th in the league when they had zero shots last time against Bayern, two shots in this match? Because to me, that seems like just a dead weight team.
Yeah, well, they were actually eighth even going into this match, and they're in that spot in the table that, I just say 11th through 4th. I don't know if it's changed after this match day or whatever, but 11th through 4th in the Bundesliga has been separated by like 4 points for a super long stretch of time. It's really close in there. And actually, Bremen for this match. half their team got a red card after the match ended last week against Mainz. That was one that I watched. Really wild match. They ended up winning 1-0. But after the match, there was some fireworks. The ref just lost control of the match. Red cards everywhere, all around. But yeah, their captain wasn't there in this one. Their center back, their coach got a red card, and so they were missing a ton of key pieces in this match in particular. First match of the year, I think Bayern just overpowered them. That was when Bayern's attack was kind of firing on all cylinders. Their line was so high, and they were just boom, 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 boom. Now Bayern's kind of slowed off, but this weakened team that, Bremen was without some of their key players just wasn't enough to keep up with Bayern. That's how I'd answer that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go back to this, which we've talked about here. It's been the case for weeks now, but it it's almost as if we're saying Bayern's attack is weaker, but really it's just that finishing again because I look and it's eight big chances over 4 xG. So as we do move into that second half, you start to see more of those chances, and some of them do end up falling. Some of that xG can of course be attributed to a couple penalties, but still eight big chances. So you're generating some of that. And then the finishing clearly might not be totally there.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Because Bayern dominates these matches in terms of possession. Even in the Champions League, some of these matches that they lost, and some of these draws in the Bundesliga, they're always dominating possession. And I think a key point to that is how good their midfield is, especially in this match. Their midfield is the reason Bayern won the match, in my opinion. Kimmich and Pavlovic just dominated the match. They completely controlled flow of play, pace, just everything. Pavlovic, if you look at his stats in this match, he's getting back to where he was before his injury with whatever 95% passing accuracy and probably 100% on his long balls, and Kimmich is the one who's really dictating the flow of the match as well. So that's why Bayern is able to dominate possession and really kind of rack up the XG, in my opinion. It's because of that midfield. And then also in the first half, Bremen was following the beat Bayern blueprint, which is sit back in the first half, kind of let Bayern tire themselves out, let Bayern miss their chances, try to play a few long balls, try to counter quickly, and score from there. And then in the second half, maybe be a little bit more aggressive. And that game plan worked for them in the first half, but then Bayern just, yeah, did better in the second half with their chances, and Bremen really didn't even create chances in the second half.
And I have no respect for some of that strategic maneuvering by Bremen because you're never going to win a match that way if you're then getting no shots, essentially, because you're letting yourself get dominant in midfield, which even if you kind of do lay back, you got to at least attempt to get some action in the midfield because it's so tough to generate chances just from a defensive standpoint, just if you're bombing stuff away or whatever the case may be. So, a low block, whatever, defensive, it's just so tough. And eventually Bayern are going to score. And obviously they do end up with a few. So
Yeah, and that kind of opened up in the second half there, the 56th minute, um, which actually, before that, I guess I should mention my moment of the match was Vincent Kompany's halftime talk, because whatever he said in the locker room at halftime totally changed things, as I've kind of been alluding to. But yeah, that 56th minute, we did see the handball awarded in the box. And Kane made a nice run, and it was unlucky for Bremen because the ball kind of got stuck in between the defender's chest and his arm. But I mean, it happened because Kane made a great run into the box, and if the guy doesn't kind of trap the ball in between his arm and his chest, Kane likely scores that anyways. So, you know, deserved penalty for Bayern, but unlucky for Bremen because that is kind of, you know, in hindsight, that's where the match ends because again, with the style that we talked about that they were playing, you're almost playing for a draw, but you're certainly playing for that first goal. And when Bayern gets that first goal and you're not generating chances, it's like, that's it.
totally agree. Good run by Kane and kind of manipulation of the ball and then slots it away with a perfect penalty.
Yeah. And, from there, we saw things get a little bit better for Bayern. Like I said, their crossing, which had been dreadful all match, not just from Coman. Boué had a couple of really bad crosses, and other players too. Their crossing just started to click. And that was when their attack started to get better. Now, I know I just said Boué had some bad crosses in that match, but I did want to mention, I thought that. The right side of Bayern's attack was so much stronger than the left side in this match. Boué and Olise were 1,000 times better at just breaking down the block, at whatever, throughout the whole entire match. Any attacking element, that right side was better than the left side of Coman and Guerrero. So I did want to throw that out there, but yeah, we saw some subs then in the 73rd minute. Konrad Laimer actually comes on for Sasha Bouet. Um, and in the 80th minute, a little bit later, Leroy Sane comes on for Coman and Goretzka for Pavlovic. So some subs there that I think Company did a great job with. And yeah, minutes later, 82nd minute, Bayern gets that second goal. Um, Started by a nice little run by Musiala to kind of dribble past the defender, and then he finds Limer, who just takes the ball all the way up that right side and crosses it in perfectly to Zane, who is in the right place at the right time. So credit to Zane for that, and just taps it in.
Major, major credit to Sane for that goal, in my opinion. When you kind of look at how that play is developing, you see Sane drifting into the box, and you're thinking, okay, he's gonna maybe gonna try to come near post and expect maybe a low cross from Limer, but then instead he kind of drifts back a little left to the other side of the defender. And whether Limer's reading that perfectly or not, or ends up getting lucky with the cross, but his little mini looped cross ends up working out perfectly since Sane had kind of moved back that way. And from there it was quite an easy goal. But really the positioning there to me was what made that goal special.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that's the attacking mindset that we saw from Bayern in the second half. It was runs like that, and you know, not all of them went in. Kane actually missed a couple that I thought he could have, and on another day definitely does make. Um, so yeah, it was kind of weird because I thought Kane was honestly probably the best offensive player for most of the day, but just with his movement and his runs, which we don't always see from him in the box. Sometimes he's more stagnant. He was creating a ton of chances, wasn't always getting the ball, and then when he did, he actually missed some of the chances that he normally would make. So kind of a just a weird thing to note, but yeah, I mean overall better second half. Olise did a lot better in the second half, I thought, and Olise is first of all, clearly Bayern's best winger right now, better than Zane, Coman, Gnabry. And then I put Zane above Coman and Gnabry still, even though Zane hasn't done enough this year either. But I will say, and it's strange because Olise, however many matches you look at, I feel like every time I look, he's getting an outrageously high score on these scoring systems like SofaScore. He's always like up in the high eights or low nines, but he didn't have the greatest match, I thought. So I don't know how they calculate these scores all the time, but he missed some crosses. I think his final third decision making isn't always the best. And again, I believe he's the best winger on the team, but I'm just saying like it's weird how the scoring system works because I'm sure, most of Bayern's attackers actually probably scored pretty high and they seem like they do based off statistics. But when you watch the games, it's like there's still something missing. There's still a final third decision that's just wrong a lot of times.
Yeah, and they've certainly had enough time at this point to try to get that chemistry flowing. I will say it's not always going to be perfect in the first year when a player gets added to a team. Some of these things take a while just to get a perfect chemistry. And so, really, for him to have as good of a year as he's had, I think is a compliment to the player that he is, the talent that he has. And then as well, you have to consider how company uses the players and him trying to figure out how these puzzle pieces work. They've had so many moving parts at times in the attack. So a lot of factors at play ultimately is what it comes down to. But agreed that Michael Olise has been the best winger on the team. Not quite the best player, as I maybe predicted before the year, but still strong, and has a lot of room to improve, which I think is the key.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to really put that. And like I said, with these wingers, it's tough. But if you want to do this 4-2-3-1 and you're not going to move Musiala out, I think what you got to do is throw Sane on that left wing and throw Olise on the right wing, and then if you want to keep Musiala in the middle. Um, but it's weird with Zane, and I thought he did good in this one. But he's clearly struggling with his confidence lately, and I think that's part of it with these wingers. Coman's there too right now. Gnabry's there too. They, I don't know, they feel like they have to do too much, I think, when they have the ball. And I've been saying this, but they miss Kane a lot or they crowd out the box. Zane especially really drifts in when I think, isn't getting the ball very much or feels like he needs to be doing more. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much because I feel like I talk about this a lot with this attacking group, but um, overall something has to change if they want to go far in the Champions League and continue to be like the dominant force that they are in the world. Um, but yeah, as far as the rest of the match goes, 89th minute, Stanisic comes on, Guerrero comes off. That move needed to happen a lot sooner, I thought. I would have started Stanisic. I think he is probably the best like outside back for Bayern outside of Alphonso Davies, who's injured right now. Um, and Konrad Laimer is certainly doing a lot to put himself in that conversation for right back, but I think Stanisic is defensively so much better than Laimer, Boué, and Guerrero. I get it if you want to play Guerrero or I mean Boué or Laimer on that right side for now, but hey, Stanisic has to play on that left side, in my opinion. So unless he's still hurt and is getting nursed back in, but um, that's just one of the things I would do a little bit differently. I really hope we see him in this Champions League match against Celtic.
Yeah, that's something to watch for sure going forward. The health of these players and what company decides could be a key factor, especially in the Champions League. So for them to toe that line of figuring out how to rest and bring guys back is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, and then final action of the match, 97th minute. Jamal Musiala, who I thought had been having a relatively quiet match, especially by his standards. He hasn't seemed right, or like up to his standards, I should say. He's still playing fine, but he could be so much better this year, as in 2025. Had a great first half of the season, but then got that illness in the second half, and I feel like he hasn't quite been himself. In this match, especially, he fell into the trap that Musiala sometimes falls into, which is putting his head down and just dribbling into a block of defenders. And he's so good at that, so I have to forgive him because a lot of times he can just take on seven guys at once. But a lot of times in this match, he would just get the ball stolen and then ended up flailing around somewhere. But anyways, in the 97th minute, the opposite happened, and he pretty much just blew through the entire defense, took on, I don't know, four or five guys at once, and got past all of them. And the last ditch effort for Bremen was to take him down in the box, which resulted in a penalty. Um, and Kane scored that 3-0. Match is over. That's how it ends.
And another good pen by Kane has not missed. He's up over 20 now in the Bundesliga, so good for him. And there's got to be a record at some point being set, or if he already has it.
Yeah, he hasn't missed for Bayern. I think he's maybe 27 in a row now. I mean, obviously counting last year too. Um, yeah, for Bayern and I mean, what can you say? He's as automatic as they come from the spot, which, I guess call him a pen merchant if you want, but it's part of the game and he deserved to take those two and like there's something to be said about having somebody who's that sure from the spot. I think it kind of goes underrated a little bit.
Still got to make him every time.
I will just throw out here my match awards for the Bayern match. Kane, man of the match for scoring that brace. Like I said, I really liked his movement on the day, even though he did lack in finishing a little bit. Um, And then Robin, I wanted to give it to either Kimmich or Pavlovich. I'll give it to both of them as the midfield because, like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, they dominated the match. Underrated player. I'll give it to Zane or Limer for kind of coming in and providing that little fiery spark to get that second goal. And defender of the match is Upamecano. I did want to just say a few things about Upamecano because I think he is having a very underrated season. You know, Bayern's back line plays a very risky way, and you're asking a lot of your center backs. And honestly, quite frankly, I don't think we've seen enough out of Kim to warrant, the way that they play. Kim makes a lot of horrible positioning decisions, which essentially lead to goals. And Upamecano has kind of stepped up and been that leader. Yes, he's prone to mistakes sometimes in big moments too, especially if you run him 90 minutes every match in this super aggressive format. I think it's bound to happen. But I wanted to give him a shout out because I think, especially with a stronger partner, he could be, an incredible center back. And he's already having a great underrated year overall.
Yeah, Upamecano, who has been rumored to be in talks for contract extension with Bayern, saw that I think this morning. But I did want to give a man of the match for the double wins that Bayern had against Werder Bremen. And that man of the match is a man that has a large head, as was discussed earlier today. And it's Vincent Kompany because no matter what, if you play two matches against a team and they have two shots in total in those two matches, you're doing something right tactically. So credit to him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I do think that it's important to mention that Bayern has 54 points in 21 games right now in the Bundesliga. You go over and look at La Liga, you go over and look at the Premier League. I don't know exactly what it's like in Italy or in France in terms of points, but um, and it's not saying companies the Bundesliga god. The Bundesliga is weaker this year than it was last year. I think that's really not up for debate just because of how much Leverkusen has dropped off. I will say I think that middle part of the table in the Bundesliga is still strong. Um, and you got some feisty little teams like St. Pauli down there that can always provide shocks. I mean, even Kiel was providing shocks at different points in this year. So that's one thing that I think maybe doesn't get talked about enough in global football is that company has a hell of a lot of points with only 21 games in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And you bring up the other teams in the Bundesliga. It's crazy because I didn't realize that we had a local tie in Milwaukee to a Bundesliga team. I wasn't aware that St. Paul's Fish Market sponsored a team.
Nice. I thought you were going to mention Frankfurt there because they're rumored to be partnering with the Milwaukee soccer team, which, let's face it, is that ever happening?
I'd say it's about as likely as Chelsea are to win this year's FA Cup.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Yeah, so now Bayern Munich goes up against Celtic in the Champions League this Wednesday. Next Saturday, they're back in the Bundesliga against Leverkusen, who, yes, dropped points today against Wolfsburg, which is absolutely huge for Bayern Munich, that match was a nil-nil draw. And then the following Wednesday, Celtic travels to Germany for the second leg of that Champions League round of 16 play-in. So just a packed schedule for Bayern for this next week. And this is kind of like where the rubber meets the road. You know, they've been skating by in these Bundesliga matches, which credit to them for that. A win is a win. But like I said, Company has not really proven himself, and the players, frankly, haven't really proven themselves in massive matches this year yet, outside of a few. You know, PSG is one that I can think of. So now it's where the rubber meets the road, and we got to see how Bayern's gonna do. Celtic away is apparently one of the craziest atmospheres in football, so I don't want to count Celtic out. Bayern should be able to beat them. They're a much more talented team. If Bayern plays their game, especially with that return leg at the Allianz, they should be able to win that. But again, I don't want to count anything out, even though Leverkusen is kind of like almost at times it seems like they're playing for the Champions League, which with these lineups that they're putting out there, not their best players all the time. Um, I don't want to count them out for the league either. I'll go ahead and count out every other team in the Bundesliga, but I don't want to count out Leverkusen. So especially if Leverkusen wins at the Bayern next Saturday. But yeah, either way, it's just a packed schedule coming up, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that Bayern would have to have a pretty big choke to lose the league at this point, but I do think Leverkusen is leaning more into Champions League. They already won the Bundesliga last year. Not that it wouldn't be cool to win back to back. Just don't think it's as important for them this year, especially when you're probably only going to have Alonso for this year. So we'll see what happens with these matches upcoming, but every match now for the rest of the season for Bayern is important.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, I expect and I want Bayern to win the Bundesliga. I obviously want them to do well in Europe in the Champions League, but the way that they're playing in the Champions League right now, I mean that 3-0 loss to Feyenoord, I'm not saying anybody can beat them, but there are definitely no sure things in the Champions League. So yeah, just pedal to the metal right now, full steam ahead.
Totally.
All right, I guess let's talk about Chelsea now. I don't have anything else to say about Bayern.
All right, yeah. So Chelsea today, we just were watching together this match against Brighton in the FA Cup. They lose 2-1. One of the more boring and pathetic displays from both sides in this match. I think we both really didn't find much joy in watching it. Chelsea are playing uninspired football. I'm going to keep using that term, but it's the truth. There's no grit and energy and motivation to this team. And Maresca isn't doing things tactically that we were hoping he would. So overall, not great. I will quickly run through what Chelsea lined up with today. I came in seeing it thinking it was a pretty solid lineup. I was mistaken, but they had Sanchez, Cucurella, Chalobah, Tosin, Gusto. Ugh, just disgusting. KDH, who I predicted might get in, Caicedo, and then Sancho, Palmer, Neto, and Kunku in attack. All uninspiring.
Yeah, and extremely uninspiring for me because I was 10 minutes late to the match at your place, watching the match at your place, and um, yeah, missed both of those first two goals that happened right away. So, um, yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Maresca really has to figure things out. These players have to show more heart, frankly, more character, because they looked so lackadaisical today. Even when they were down, they didn't look like they tried until stoppage time. Um, that first half, it looked like Brighton and Chelsea were almost tactically too similar, but not good enough at what they were trying to do. Very stretched. The pitch was very stretched. I thought that the best things from Chelsea happened when Caicedo was trying to play through balls, long through balls, through this massive amount of space in the midfield, and Chelsea's attackers just couldn't do anything when they got those balls. Um, but yeah, so much space. I needed Chelsea to do more in the midfield. I think I needed to see Enzo come in earlier. Um, but even when Enzo came in, that didn't really change things. So, yeah, I mean, brutal own goal to open up the match. My boy Bart, the Dutch keeper on Brighton, just dropped a ball right into the net from a shot that was going in probably by Palmer. And you would think that Chelsea would be, um, I don't know, more enthused to kind of build off of that.
Yeah, lots to touch on based on what you said there. The first point being that Caicedo was the only bright spot, and the only positive signs of attack that we did see were, as you mentioned, those balls over the top that Caicedo would attempt, and then either KDH, Palmer, Neto, or Nkunku would find some way to screw it up after being delivered what was a pretty solid ball. So that was disappointing. Again, Caicedo really the only good player on the day. The thing about the energy or lack thereof for Chelsea is there's all these opportunities to show energy that you'd think you would, and they don't. You immediately within 5 minutes get gifted a goal by the opposing team. So you're thinking right away, all right, boys, this is awesome. We're up 1-0. Let's play fast. Let's play free. Bring the energy and let's dismantle this team. We're on the road. Let's make sure they don't even get to breathe after this mistake. That didn't happen. Then Brighton evened it up 1-1, and you're like, okay, we got slapped in the face. Time to bring the energy back. And you still don't. So then you go into halftime. Is there any fire up speech? Is there any motivation to get better in the second half? Clearly not, because pretty early in the second half, you give up a goal. Again, just terrible defending. So then, desperation mode. You're down 2-1, FA Cup, no goal differential considerations. You might as well give it your all, and you still show a pretty much lackadaisical performance. And that to me is what is pretty concerning going forward with this team.
Yeah, I mean, their style didn't even really change at halftime either. There were no subs at halftime. Um, yeah, just a weird low energy day. And you think that it would be the opposite. You know, you have a chance to win some silverware here. It's still early on in the FA Cup, but I mean, we saw Manchester United win the FA Cup last year, and they are a dumpster fire train wreck of a football team. So if they can win it, you know, you think that anybody would have a shot at least. So um, just disappointing overall. I mean, yeah, the defense was really lackluster. Both of those goals, I think, there was just some miscommunication. The first one was that nice header, impossible to save. I guess it was Chalobah who didn't mark the man there. But Chalobah and Tosin just didn't really have chemistry. Either one of them, I think, need a stronger partner as a center back pairing there to really leave their mark on a match. And then the second goal, which was my moment of the match because that was uh, that was it. After that, Chelsea didn't seem to care or try. But the second goal there, KDH and Tosin, I thought both did nothing and should have done more. And then Sanchez was out of position, couldn't decide if he wanted to go up or stay back. And we saw that a lot from Sanchez this match, this year. I mean, it's really the same story. Can't really decide to go up, to stay back, usually chooses wrong and makes a mistake and just is not a very confident keeper.
Yeah, didn't make any glaring mistakes, but you can tell he has zero confidence and no clue what to do when the ball's heading toward him. Defense just poor. Chalobah Tosin, as you said, nothing doing. Gusto lost possession 21 times. I saw. I don't know how that's possible as a right back.
That's brutal.
Just just so bad. I mean, you think wingers are losing possession a lot when they try to go at guys, but we got a right back that's trying to invert and is just terrible. He doesn't quite have a role on this team. And Kunku doesn't have a role. I mean, half these guys don't have set roles on this team. The management of this team has been so crazily poor lately that you're just left wondering who's to blame. And all you can probably say is a mix of everything and maybe the most blame to the sporting directors who've tried to put this team together.
Yeah, and Kunku leading the press as a striker doesn't work. He needs to be a 10 or maybe like a left wing, but who plays more in the middle. Um, I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching on video, because not a true left winger, but um, yeah, and Gusto, I don't even know where to begin. I think it's just time for him to move on, unless Chelsea's team structure changes a little bit. I don't know. I wish Reece James was there. That's one thing I'll say. Jackson does a much better job of leading the press, even though he's not like a traditional target man, which a lot of times Chelsea's wingers are kind of crossing in, looking for a target man, and there's just nobody there, as we kind of talked about during the match. So, um, yeah, I mean, it is concerning because I don't really know where you go. You can't just rely on the individual brilliance of some of these guys. You have to, you know, it's probably mostly on the sporting directors, like you said, but also on Enzo Maresca. You have to just formulate a more cohesive plan because there is not much chemistry happening right now.
Yeah, I think Maresca needs to figure something out, whether it's brand new tactics or slightly modified. His inverting fullbacks is not working. The wide wingers that have nobody to cross to, but also don't look to score is not working. Palmer isn't finding anyone to pass to and isn't getting in any great positions, especially when he's being double and triple teamed. Something needs to change, and we're nearing desperation mode. And I hope Enzo Maresca realizes that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, second half, Brighton really became extremely compact and didn't stretch the field at all. Just kind of backed up a little bit and let Chelsea do nothing with the ball. Basically, I don't know what the possession was. It seemed like Chelsea had a lot more possession in the second half, but um, like you said, something has to change because this match is maybe a microcosm for the season. Nothing changed in that second half, and something is going to have to change in terms of how the team is structured in the second half of the season now.
Totally. And it's going to have to change quick because you face the same exact team on Friday coming up now. And all these Premier League matches are essentially must wins with how tight things are in the race for the top four, top five. And then you consider you still got the Conference League. And I don't think we're as confident as we once were with the Conference League with the players that we've sent out on loan or sold or are suspended. I don't know. It's such an interesting spot to be if you're Chelsea right now.
Yeah, you got to win the Conference League, I think. So, any closing thoughts to mention on Chelsea Football Club?
Just that I will continue to let it ride, enjoy the season as much as I can. You know, it brings me joy, this team still, even though it's been tough lately. So yeah, I'm just gonna do that, and I do still have faith that we will get trophies at some point. That faith is waning at times, but there's talent on this team, and I know that if something clicks, they can be special.
Do they change their lineup for Brighton in the Premier League now after what we
If
saw
they
today?
if they don't, I won't watch the match.
All right, fair enough. We might have to end it there. Again, video episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and leave us a comment down below if you want to be part of this 100 subscriber giveaway for some cool Bayern cards or 5 minutes of airtime.
If you are a local listener and you comment something about St. Paul's, maybe we can go over there and have some oysters together.
Wow, there you go. What a friendly invite. Yeah. Stay tuned as we keep saying. Busy week here. We'll have coverage dropping for the Champions League matches midweek. We'll have coverage for the weekend matches as well. Um, yeah, and as always, Mia San Mia.
Up the Chelsea.